Hey everybody, it's Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 17 of season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars called Sabotage. So we are finally back with Anakin and Ahsoka after a really long time. And I gotta say, this is really just kind of an okay episode. I think it might be setting stuff up, but its execution could have been better. But anyway, let's get into it. We find ourselves joining this episode with an attack on the planet Cato Nemoidia. And it's even explicit. They're attacking Cato Nemoidia, but the way it's phrased here, it sort of sounds like, at least to me, as if they were saying it's under an attack by bad guys. The Separatists. Of course, Cato Nemoidia is a colony world of the Nemoidians, so it's very much a firmly separatist planet. The people who are doing the attacking are, of course, the Republic, but just the way it was presented made it seem like kind of this was a Republic world being attacked by bad guys. Now, granted, this might have just been me, so. But anyway, that's my reaction to that particular situation. Now, Cato Nemoidia is a kind of an interesting planet. It's got a few little interesting notes in Star Wars lore. This is in Revenge of the Sith, where Plo Koon, who we've seen several times over the series, over the years on the show, many times. This is ultimately where he is shot down and killed by the clones after Darth Sidious orders Order 66. And if you're familiar with Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, really cool video game there, then part of the game takes place here on that particular planet. To say more would really kind of spoil it, but let's just say that quite a bit of butt gets kicked on Cato Nemoidia right there. So anyway, now basically the idea here in this episode is because Anakin and Ahsoka were not at the Jedi Temple when it was bombed, the Jedi Council feels this makes them the ideal choices to investigate this. Now, this really doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, Ahsoka is a Padawan, and Anakin's a Jedi Knight. He's only been a Jedi Knight for about 2 years or so at this point. I'm really not keeping a super close eye on the timeline here, but let's just say he's been a Jedi Knight for about 2 years. So there's no way that these are the only two Jedi who were not on Coruscant when this, or hanging out in the Jedi Temple when this happened. I mean, we even see Obi-Wan Kenobi is attending the Jedi Council meeting by hologram. We see Shakti is there at the beginning, but later she comes back in and she's a hologram. So Jedi are still moving around. So really, why would you put this on Anakin, who has no training really whatsoever in investigating stuff like this? He's really a fighter. He is technically a Jedi Guardian. His job is to go out there and kick butt. Stuff like this is what you have Jedi Sentinels for. In fact, there's even Jedi called Jedi Investigators who specialize in investigating crimes. They're basically the Jedi FBI agents. Seriously, this is established Star Wars lore. So, again, why are you asking Anakin and Ahsoka to do this? It makes absolutely no sense. And the only reason this happens is because they are main characters. I mean, if you're going to do somebody like this, somebody like Jedi Master Thalom, who, as admitted by his creator, was essentially made with the idea of what if Sherlock Holmes was a Jedi, and stories with him have shown that Thalome, or which is I think how his name is pronounced, he's really quite good at that. Somebody, and if you don't want to bring that character in, well, why not use Quinlan Voss? Okay, he was Thalome's Padawan. He is established, in the expanded universe lore as having some experience, more than a little bit of it, in investigating stuff like this. I mean, has his psychometry powers, which would be extraordinarily invaluable. But again, Anakin and Ahsoka are our main characters, so of course, even though they're completely unqualified to do this, we're going to have them investigate this crime. I mean, honestly, this feels like Battlestar Galactica when Commander Adama picked Starbuck to interrogate a Cylon, even though she's a fighter pilot. I mean, it's the exact same ridiculous kind of logic. But, it is what it is, so let's roll with this. Now, one thing that I do have to say I like about this episode is this is an episode that is not afraid to go to a dark place. When we first see the crime scene where the bomb went off, if you look very carefully, you can see there's still some poor luckless SOB's hand sticking out of the rubble there. I mean, it's a real blink and you'll miss it thing, but it's there. And of course, we're ultimately led to discover that this is a fellow who was basically tricked into eating nanites that exploded him. He was an innocent person who was turned into a suicide, not even to a suicide bomber, into just a plain old bomb by his wife, no less. I mean, man, if things like that are possible in the Star Wars universe, man, I can't imagine how anybody could possibly look at their bowl of morning cornflakes the same way ever again. And I don't know, now to the best of my knowledge, nothing like this has ever really been brought up before. In fact, I don't even think nanites or nanodroids have even really been mentioned in Star Wars before. Now, I could be wrong on that, but if these things are around, gee, you'd think that they might have been a little bit bigger deal in Star Wars lore before. But Star Wars is not without its logical inconsistencies, shall we say. But anyway, one thing, when we do get to see the guy's hand, did you notice that it was kind of green and only had 4 fingers on it? And then when we meet his wife, she's obviously a human who, of course, has 5 fingers. So I think it's kind of interesting that the fellow who died was apparently an alien married to a human woman. Usually we see human heroes hooking up with alien ladies, so it was nice to see a little bit of an inversion there. And, not something that was really remarked on at all. It was just there, treated as a fact. Treated as honestly irrelevant, because of course it was. Now, the character of the guy's wife, I believe her name was Jet or something like that. She was voiced by Carrie Walgren. She's a veteran voice actor, known for stuff like Charmcaster on Ben 10 and Amora the Enchantress on Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. She's also done anime work. She was a lead character in Witch Hunter Robin. But all in all, to me, she will always be Haruko Haruhara on the show FLCL, which is, if you're not familiar with it, one of the most mind-bendingly bizarre anime programs ever made, but also something that just absolutely kicks loads of butt. And she does a very nice performance this time around, as would be expected. But I think this was really just a lot of setup here. We were given that some vague hints that she was swayed by anti-Republic propaganda, but a lot of stuff is just really left unanswered. Now, like I said, I have the feeling this is probably set up for the big thrust, the big final arc of whatever's coming for the remainder of the season. But it just leaves you walking away from this episode feeling extremely unsatisfied because, apart from the fact the dude was killed by his wife, we don't really learn all that much. We don't really understand her motives. We don't really even understand, what anybody really had to gain by doing this. I mean, yes, people were upset, but those were just as it was said, friends and family of the people who worked at the Jedi Temple who just wanted to know if their loved ones were all right. It doesn't really seem like there was a whole lot of public outrage over something like this. So the question of who benefits doesn't really get answered. Now, I did like that this episode really makes it very firm that there are folks who work at the Jedi Temple who are not Jedi. They are civilians. This is something that's been touched upon in expanded universe lore before. In fact, if you're familiar with the character of Jax Pavin, very cool guy from the Star Wars novels, it's even explicitly stated that his parents were civilian employees at the Jedi Temple. Now, of course, these sort of folks being there make perfect sense. If you think of the temple as being like part military base, part university, well, then it makes perfect sense that there would be people who were not Jedi there, helping keep things running. I mean, if a toilet breaks at the Jedi Temple, you're probably not going to call the Jedi plumber to go and deal with it. You're just going to call a regular plumber and send the Jedi off to go, beat up some droids or something. So I did like that. It really just sort of makes the Jedi seem more like a real organization, makes the world in which they inhabit seem more like a world that we can understand. We also get a brief appearance by Sin, and I'm probably not saying this right, Sin Drailing. He's the Jedi that Anakin speaks to briefly in front of the crowd before the guy's wife pops up. He was in the Revenge of the Sith, but he had a real kind of blink in your moment and you'll miss him kind of appearance. And basically, he was one of the Jedi who was personally killed by Anakin after he turns to the dark side and becomes Darth Vader. And Sin's role is basically he's the top lightsaber guy at the Jedi Temple. There are 7 lightsaber styles. He has mastered 6 of them. Most Jedi only ever master 3 of them. The 7th one, okay, that's kind of a long story, but the simplest explanation on that is the only person in the Jedi who currently knows that one is Mace Windu, and his Padawan, who's also got his former Padawan, who has some very weird stuff going on. That, again, long story. Hit Wikipedia, the Star Wars wiki, if you would like to know more about that, because the details on all of the Jedi and Sith lightsaber styles, which are the same. Jedi and Sith practice the same lightsaber styles. But essentially, it's actually extremely interesting stuff, and is even to certain degrees based on real-world sword fighting. Again, to a certain degree, but as I said, if you're interested in the lore of the Star Wars universe, go check that out. It's really, really cool stuff. Now, one quibble that I did have with this episode, getting back to some of the less desirable things, is what exactly was that power that Anakin used to get into those people's apartment? I mean, is there like the Force lockpick ability? I mean, he just sort of waved his hand at the keypad and the door opened. I'm sorry, Anakin. I don't think Jedi mind trick works on electronics. That seemed like some BS. And, really, you'd think that they could have just gotten the key from the guy's wife or something like that. But anyway, one thing worth noting is that Anakin has one of those moments where he gets really intense when he gets into the wife's face, and shades of the dark side. I was really, really straining my ears, hoping to see, hear a few beats of the Imperial March, which has been played very discreetly in the background a few times when Anakin has done somewhat dark side things, like when he killed the guy who was going to blow up the ship that he and Obi-Wan and Satine were on, and when he kind of beat up Poggle the Lesser during his interrogation of the guy. If you listen carefully in those scenes, you can hear a few beats of the Imperial March. They're meant to subtly indicate Anakin's tragic ultimate destiny. And with that said, I think I've covered everything I really have to say with this episode. This just really feels so much like a setup episode. It feels like, part 1 of a 2-parter in a way. So I don't really feel like I'm able to offer the fullest review, but I can only work with what the show gives me, folks, and I've said what I had to say. So with that, we're going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.